Let's share a toast. To Ukrainian freedom. To the heroes of Ukraine. To Serhiy, to Kot, to Vova, Lana, Yulia, Cookie, Dnipro, and all those other soldiers who I've known, who were good people, volunteered to be there, and paid the ultimate price. You guys will have to forgive me. I try not to think about this stuff too often because I just get stuck not being able to do anything, not being able to sleep, thinking about my guys. But in filming this recording, you got me thinking about my soldiers and hundreds of them who will go home not in one piece, missing arms, missing legs, or even worse, not mentally complete anymore upstairs because of the trauma and the destruction of war and what it does to their minds. But I want to use these few minutes to chat with you, and I want you to understand the effects of donations, the effects of volunteers, and what it is like actually on the ground in this war in Ukraine. Now, you've all seen the videos, you all watch the YouTube videos, you all have your favorite blogger that you follow on YouTube, but that doesn't give you the actual sensation of being shot at, the sensation of trying to save someone's life and then failing to save this person's life. And I can try to share a little bit of insight, a little bit of my experience. My name is Brian Wang. I'm a professional firearms instructor. I live and I work here in the Bay Area. We teach classes every single week. Just here in the Bay Area, we have our own shooting facility, training facility. We teach beginners how to use guns. We teach fighting tactics. We teach long-range precision shooting. We teach sniper craft. We teach all the things you might want to learn about how to fight, how to use weapons, how to defend yourself. And if you have an interest in going to Ukraine and volunteering in, for example, the Ukraine Foreign Legion, I can help you train to go to fight in the Foreign Legion. And I have trained many soldiers who have gone and volunteered and served very, very well in the Ukraine Foreign Legion. But that's enough about me. Let's talk about you. You're here because you have an interest in the Ukraine war, how it's going. You have an interest in donating. You have an interest in helping. And you have an interest in volunteering, perhaps. And I want you to know, first and foremost, is that your contributions matter. More than anything else that we could talk about today is that if you are doing something, it's working and it's enough. But I want you to always remember that there is something that you could do, and there's someone that you can encourage to do more. And I want you to never give up faith. You are doing what you can, and what you can is enough. And it's all of value. The question now is, where does it go? What does it do? What does it look like? And how do your donations and volunteerism, how does it affect people down the line? I served 6 months in Ukraine. Now I've got a business to run. I've got a baby to take care of. I've got my wife to take care of. And frankly, I don't have the funding to be there and be away from my business and be away from my family. If I am over there and I'm not working, who will help? Who will take care of my family? And that's the reason why I'm here. But the thing is, my experiences from 6 months in Ukraine can be shared with you guys that can allow us to duplicate, multiply the effects of just one volunteer, the effects of just one donor. I've donated as much as I can, and I volunteered as much as I can. And now, if you have the ability to donate, if you have the ability to give, if you have the ability to volunteer, let's talk. Let me share with you my experiences. as a professional firearms instructor, I went to Ukraine in April of last year. And for a month, I bounced around from law enforcement units and military units, trying to help and trying to train as much as I could. Until finally, there was a man named Valery Marcus, and maybe you know him because he's actually quite well known. He, through a mutual friend, messaged me and said, would you please come and help us? Because we have a project, and it's a big project, and I don't have any trainers. I don't have any instructors. They're going to embark on a grand mission, which is to make a miniature U.S. Army in the Ukrainian military, a miniature NATO fighting force who was trained and equipped by NATO doctrine, by Western doctrine, who would be able to fight in a different way, in a way that manages the lives of the people, that values and prioritizes the lives of the soldiers, and has very highly motivated soldiers, not people who are forced to be there. And so, what is a volunteer? I show up on day one, and we begin training for 3 weeks. 3 weeks, and that's all we had, and then we went to war. This was June of last year, 2022, and we were defending a frontline area that was based around a power plant called the Vuhilirska Thermal Energy Center. And we saw our first taste of combat as a unit. And now the 47th Mechanized Brigade, as you may have seen in the news, ever since June 6th, when they kicked off their counteroffensive, all of June and all of July, they have been fighting hard and grinding hard and doing the most dangerous, most deadly, and most difficult work of the Ukraine counteroffensive. But who are these people? And the thing is, when we talk about volunteers, like you, like me, normal people, good people, peaceful people, not military, not warriors, not soldiers, those are the volunteers of the 47th Mechanized Brigade. And those are the volunteers of all those other frontline units in Ukraine who are doing the bulk of the fighting. These are people who choose to be there. Now, maybe they could have just waited until they had no choice and waited till they got mobilized and forced to dig trenches or whatever, but these people volunteered to be in the most elite, the most dangerous, the most high casualty frontline combat units. And they are like you, they're like me, they're like my friend Andrei Smolensky, who got hit by an artillery shell and now he is blind, he is almost deaf, he's lost both his arms, and he does sign language with his toes. And that's how he can communicate with the outside world, and that's how he can communicate with his wife. But you know what, Andre, before the war, he was an IT guy. He worked in tech. He spoke English. He was a musician. He sang in a band. He was just a normal, regular guy, but he had a lot of passion for, number one, protecting the innocent people. And number two, driving out the invader, driving out the occupant, the occupier, because he realized that there are certain things which are wrong, which are evil, and he could not live with himself to just watch this thing happen. And so he volunteered for the most dangerous duty. And he applied his intelligence, he applied his passion into flying drones for the 47th. And he learned how to fly drones, and he communicated and coordinated and led and brought in all the volunteer groups and the third parties, the nonprofit organizations that fundraised and bought drones and then delivered drone training and then 3D printers and then shared techniques and tactics of how to use the drones and how to make the little dropping hands so they can 3D print the tail fins on grenades, so they can disassemble old grenades and old RPG rockets and remake them into drone munitions. And Andrei Smolensky and his comrades of the drone reconnaissance team, the drone reconnaissance platoon, served in the very, very, very tip of the spear during the counteroffensive, using the most modern technology, non-military technology, off-the-shelf commercial DJI drones and Autel drones that you guys, donors, bought, with 3D printers that you, donors, bought, with time and training that volunteers and donors traveled around from unit to unit to unit doing this training and teaching folks how to use 3D printers from volunteers and donors like you. And then he was hit by an artillery shell. And then, you know what? He was evacuated in an ambulance bought by donors like you. And he was treated by medics and doctors and nurses who are volunteers like you. And now he is trying to get cochlear implants so he can hear better because he lost most of his hearing, and trying to get, there's thousands of them like Andre, just like my friend Andre, who need prosthetics, and they're paid for by donors like you. And they're put on, and their rehab and their physical therapy is done by volunteers like you. And you have to understand that this war in Ukraine, the reason why the whole world is mobilized around the defense of the Ukrainian people is because Ukraine represents all of us. The people of Ukraine are normal, good people. They like dogs. They grow potatoes in the ground. They make food and they share it with their families. And they have holidays and traditions just like you and just like I. And they love their language and they love their history and they love their neighbors and they want to live in peace and they want to cultivate their black soil so they can grow crops, so they can sell their crops and people can be fed. Like, what is wrong with any of this picture? Nothing. It looks like anyone's dream for living in peace and prosperity. And this is why the Ukraine war is so important, because number one, the Ukrainian people are us. We are the Ukrainian people. We are no different. That's number one. Number two is that this is a war of civilians. The soldiers in Ukraine, you think they're all soldiers? You think they're all military? At the start of the invasion, the start of the full-scale war last February, there were about 200,000 soldiers. Now, in the U.S. military, about 10% of that is combat soldiers. So that means about 20,000 people at that time, a year and a half ago, about 20,000 soldiers who are combat troops. Now we have 1 million. We have 1 million. Where do you think these people came from? This one night after a big artillery attack at the front line, my friend Natasha, who is our company nurse, and she came up with the idea. She says, Brian, you should take your big American rifle, because I had this M14 at the time. I was the only one with an American rifle. I'm the only American there. I'm their trainer. I'm one of the few trainers that they had. I was the only trainer there with them at the front line. And I said, that's a good idea. I took my big American M14, I put on my night vision, and I went to patrol, and I went to walk around our base. And I would stop every time I found somebody who was awake, and I would just stand with him for a little bit and just be there with him for a little bit. Now, I didn't speak much Ukrainianska mova at the time, but now my Ukrainian is better. But at the time, we had very limited communication without a translator. And so I stood there with this guy who was standing guard after this big artillery attack, and everybody was stressed out, and everybody was scared. And you know what? It was summertime. It was beautiful. We were on the edge of this reservoir, so we could hear all the crickets chirping and the frogs chirping. And I took off my night vision, I gave it to him, and I said, look at the stars. And we shared a moment. And he says, I don't know anything about war. I don't know anything about fighting. Before the war, I was a trumpet player in the orchestra. And when they needed people to volunteer, I volunteered. And the thing is, that soldier who was standing guard duty that night, alone, scared, he was a volunteer like you, like me, like us. There was nothing special about him that made him a soldier or a war fighter. And you have to understand, this is all of the people who are fighting. None of them are professional fighters. None of them are professional warriors. And they want to just live in peace. They want to go back to their previous lives, but their lives are shattered by amputations and death and destruction of their livelihoods, destruction of their families, destruction of their homeland. And this is why, of course, you are here. And so let me finish by starting where we begin. These people who every day are fighting, who every day are wounded and need medical evacuations and transport, and they need your assistance with medications. These people who are dead and their families grieve, and all they want is for the war to end so that other families need not suffer. These people thank you. These people believe in you, and these people need your help. Because without logistics means people, places, and things. It means drones, it means 3D printers, it means ambulances, it means 4x4 vehicles, it means socks and t-shirts and rain gear and Equax Generation 3 Level 7 extreme cold weather clothing. This means waterproof Gore-Tex parkas. This means gloves. This means weapons cleaning kits. These are all logistics, people, places, and things. And without you, these things don't happen. And so I ask you today to think about what you can give, how you can help, and how you can volunteer your time to help us organize the logistics. There's my baby. He's home. You guys take care of yourselves. My name is Brian Wang. If you want to learn more about our organization, you can find us at monarchdefense.org. You can find me on Instagram. Search up Monarch Defense. That's MONARCH. You can connect with me. My phone number, email address are all on the website. You can find me on Yelp. We have classes every week, several classes a week here in the Bay Area. How to use weapons, weapon safety for beginners, advanced things, tactics, nighttime training. If you want to learn how to fight, you want to learn how to defend your families, you want to learn how to buy a firearm and just own a firearm, we provide this type of training. And again, if you want to support my Ukraine mission, reach out to me, find me on social media, connect with me, and I will be happy to tell you more about my Ukraine mission to go there and train soldiers. Thank you so much. Slava Ukraini. Herom Slava.